Okay, thanks very much, Ross, and speaking to you tonight, and indeed to move the motion before us that this House has no faith in the Scottish Government. And I move this motion not on a whim, nor just for the sake of academic debate, because I believe genuinely that if people put the SNP government and its record under scrutiny, it would be very difficult to come to any other conclusion. Now, I don't care particularly what the useless Tories or Liberals say in this debate. I will be prosecuting my case based on my socialist values and the need for a major reform of our economy and society so that it works not in the interests of private capital, big business and vested interests, but in the interest of working people, those people whose labour generates the wealth and taxes that allows our society to function. It's my view that public services are what civilises our society. The work done by binmen, by hospital cleaners, teachers, youth workers, homelessness officers is the very glue that holds our society together. Yet if we look in every corner of those public services, then we see that glue being picked away by cuts, bad policy making and sheer incompetence. In education, we see the attainment gap growing between children in communities like the one I live in and those in more affluent communities. We've seen budgets cut, classroom assistants lost and class sizes rising. In the NHS, the greatest ever social policy made by any government. We were told by Shona Robertson when she was Cabinet Secretary that she would eradicate waiting times in the NHS. In my Lothian region, and by 31st of December, 19,000 people were waiting over 39 weeks for treatment. They're supposed to have a legal treatment time guarantee of 12. Look at delayed discharge. Prior to COVID, we saw delayed discharge at record levels. Older people stuck in hospital up to a year, lied to as to the reason why they were stuck in hospital, told there was no social care place for them. Then overnight in April, 1,300 places became available overnight. Older people shipped out of hospital untested, my mum one of them, into these new magically care home places. How did that happen? Was it because we built all these bedrooms overnight and recruited all these staff overnight? Well, of course it wasn't. It was because these places existed all along. What happened was the IJBs and the councils were starved of funding. And they were left people stuck in hospital at £4,000 a week left in hospital and lied to. Audit Scotland say that delayed discharge has cost £650 million of wasted money over the last 5 years. We've seen a human rights catastrophe in our care homes, thousands of elderly people isolated, over PPE not supplied to those looking after them. Staff couldn't get tested, working under immense pressure. And remember, we were told in 2014 that Scotland had world-leading social care. World-leading social care run by the likes of HC1, based in the Cayman Islands, paying 48 million in dividends to its shareholders, paying zero corporation tax, and posting a loss every year. These chancellors should be run out of the country, never mind allowed to look after our older people. And I'm sure the politicians here will tell you they're seeing more constituents than ever seeking help for mental ill health. We have a mental health crisis. In my Lothian region, someone looking to see a psychologist will wait 24 months on treatment. If you're going through a mental health crisis, you need help today, not in 24 months' time. And what about the drugs crisis? We have the worst drugs deaths crisis in the developed world. 1,300 of our fellow citizens dead, 4 times higher than the rest of the UK. And as those numbers were rising, the hapless minister in charge agreed to a 26% cut in the budget, directly resulting in people dying. We see the Sick Kids Hospital 6 years late, costing a 1.4 million a month. Climate targets missed, recycling targets missed, education reports withheld, freedom of information requests blocked, Police Scotland on their 3rd chief constable, 1 in 4 children in poverty. Scotland has the highest life expectancy gap between rich and poor than any other nation. Men in the poorest areas, like where I live, living 13 years less than their affluent fellow citizens. Food bank use has soared. We can't even feed our own people in the 6th richest country in the world. and in a country where 1% of private households own more wealth than the 50% of the poorest households. What a scandal that is. In the economy, we have a ferries contract many years late and £130 million over budget. The Cali Rail Works closed after 140 years of engineering excellence. Bifab line empty. People on the dole while turbines for the Fife Coast are built in Indonesia. Our councils have been starved of funds. 40,000 jobs have gone. As the wealthiest this year will receive £30 extra in a council tax freeze, and the lowest paid will receive the massive sum of 1 penny of benefit. And in the midst of a housing crisis, this year, the Scottish Government cut the affordable housing budget by £100 million. This is a government that never, ever accepts responsibility for its failings until it is shamed into doing so. It's always someone else's fault, whether that be councils, Westminster, the opposition, anybody except those who are in power and those who unquestionably and subserviently vote through these decisions week in, week out, year in, year out in the Parliament that I have just left. Now, I believe we need a different type of society, a different type of government, which values every human being, invests in our public services via progressive taxation, where the wealthiest pay their fair share, where tax-avoiding corporations receive no public funds or contracts, where we end the cuts to services that civilise us, where poverty is eradicated by a whole government approach, where we decriminalise drugs and treat people who are unwell, where our older people are treated with dignity and respect, not locked away and ignored, and where our young people can enjoy being young again, supported in their times of need, and enjoy an education system that gives everyone an opportunity. It is my view now more than ever, I've never believed this more in my life, that when the world is on the precipice of a disaster with climate change, where we see gross exploitation and inequality in our society and across the globe, the only way in which we can deal with this is not through free market capitalism. It's free market capitalism that's taken us to the disaster that we are in at the moment. Andrew's shaking his head. He would continue to burn every resource possible. He would continue to exploit people whenever he could in the pursuit of profit. That, to me, is a disastrous approach. And I've never more than now believed that we need a planned economy, that we need international cooperation, and we need solidarity. That's the way to a better future for Scotland, the UK, and indeed the world. Thank you very much. We have no faith in the Scottish Government.
Neil, you're the convener for the Campaign for Socialism. With socialist goals in mind, what do you think Scotland's future relationship with the EU should look like?
Well, I voted for Remain against probably much of what I've believed in all my life. I've never been a great fan of the European Union, but I ended up voting Remain at the last minute, and I was influenced very much by one Mr. Nigel Farage and his racist campaign that he ran, and I could not end up voting on the same side as that man, and that was just abhorrent. And however, I'm very much a critic of how the EU has operated, and particularly the economic policies of the European Union. So I want to see a different Europe. I want to see a different world. I think we look at the way the European Union has worked. We have mass youth unemployment across the European Union. We have huge levels of unemployment in places like Italy and Spain and Croatia and the like. The European Union has, of course, done many good things, but I think the sort of fanaticism that has developed that says that everything that the EU does is good is frankly, I think, insulting, and people should look much more closely at what the European Union does. And I don't say that from the perspective, probably the view that people like Andrew take, certainly not the Boris Johnson view of the world. That is just not where I am. I want to see a people's Europe where countries cooperate in solidarity, and where we have economic policies across the EU that create full employment, that end, the nonsense of Scottish companies unable to secure contracts and the like. So I think it's a very different Europe I want to see.